Jamie, thanks for the introduction. And everybody, thank you for letting me spend some time with you today. I really appreciate the time. I know after lunch can be a tough time to present. There's a bit of a lunch coma going on. So I'm going to start off with a question. So I want to know, what if you could identify your perfect customer with the same clarity and precision that you can identify a zebra? Today, I'm going to show you how you can do that, at least get you started, and what it will mean to you. And spoiler alert, what it means is bigger, faster, and more sales. So let's get started. What do Mount Everest, the English Channel, and the continental United States have in common? Well, they're all geographic, and they're all instrumental in tests of human endurance, whether it's climbing Mount Everest, swimming across the English Channel, or riding your bike across the United States. All very hard things to achieve. But you know what? There's something else that's just as difficult to achieve, and it's central to our conversation this afternoon, and that's change. So, to kick it off, how many of you would change your lifestyle if you were told that you'd die in a couple of years if you didn't? Let me see a show of hands. Okay, wonderful, very optimistic group. Hate to tell you, the real number is 1 in 9. And this comes from a study that was conducted at Johns Hopkins where they took cardiac patients who had gone through major cardiac events, and they explained to these people that if they didn't change their lifestyle, they were going to be dead in 5 years. And after 2 years, they found that 89% of the people that they had in the study had reverted to their old lifestyles. So what does that mean? That means that change is really difficult. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about change. We're talking about the difficulty that our customers have in changing from what they do, from changing their status quo. But we're also talking about us. We're talking about the changes that we have to make in order to become successful. I attended Sandra Yancey's summit back in May, and when she talked about the 4 parts of RISE, S was sales mastery. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about sales mastery, and we're going to talk about the changes that not only you have to go through, but you have to help your customers go through in order to change. So in order to set this up, let's talk about a couple of key stats that you need to be aware of. And these two numbers are important. 85% of the deals that are in your pipeline or your forecast or whatever it is that you use to track the opportunities that you have and what you're actually going to close, 85% of those they're never going to close. You're never going to do business with those people. That's a stat that's been around for several years. It's been studied by a number of different organizations, whether Accenture or Gartner or a bunch of different other ones. It's a real number. And just as scary and just as telling is 60. And what we've learned in 2018 from Sales Benchmark is that 60% of the sales qualified leads, so these are not people, these are people that have gone through a vetting process and they are a qualified sales lead. 60% of those sales qualified leads are going to end up in in the worst of all competitors, which is no decision. They're not going to do business. Not only are they not going to do business with you, they're not going to do business with your competition. So if you look at the difference between those two, you can see that clearly if 60% of the deals of the sales qualified leads are going to end up in no decision, it's not a very big jump to realize that 85% of the deals you're never going to sell. So the question is, why aren't you going to sell them? Why are your customers reluctant to change? They're not going to change what they're doing. 60% of them are going to just do nothing. And that's of no help to you. And it's actually of no help to them because many of them actually need to make a change. So let's explore a little bit how the changes we have to make in terms of how we approach potential customers, and then how we have to help them to understand the value of what it is that we're providing so that they can make a business decision to move in a new direction and move toward a solution that we offer them. So what information would it be valuable to you for you to know about your customer in order to help you along the way? Do I have some, just a couple of ideas? It'd be great. All right. How about characteristics that would let you know that they're an ideal customer, that would let you know that they are your zebra? Make sense? If you knew some characteristics about a potential customer that allowed you to say, wow, that is my zebra, that might help you focus your energy on those people and change that 85% to a much more palatable number. Let's talk a little bit let's step back a second, talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of sales. Has anybody been in sales long enough to remember fab selling? Right? Features, advantages, benefits. Features, advantages, benefits. You would talk about a feature, you would talk about the advantage that the feature had, which was usually a technical or a functional advantage, and then the benefit that your customer would get. It was really pretty much a product focused conversation. It was really much more focused around the thing that you were selling or the solution that you were selling. Didn't really engage the customer. Well, as customers got smarter and as business changed a little bit, then we moved into solution selling. And solution selling was this idea that we're going to take a number of different things that we do and we're going to wrap them together. So we sell software. So not only are we going to sell the software, but we're going to sell the implementation services. We're going to sell the post implementation services. We're going to sell all these things, and we're going to call this a solution. So solution selling became a really big deal, and there was books written called Solution Selling, the new solution selling. And this worked for a while, but again, what happened was as solutions got more and more complex, customers started balking because the solution was too big. They didn't need the whole solution. They only needed part of it. So all of a sudden, solution kind of became its own problem. Then we had consultative selling. So this was the next evolution. So consultative selling said, wait a minute, I'm going to ask the customer a whole lot of questions. I'm going to really engage them in conversation. We're going to dive into the way that they do business, and we're going to really consult with them, and then we're going to help come up with a solution that's going to meet their needs. Make sense? We've all done it, right? Works pretty well. The problem with consultative selling is twofold. Number one, it can lead to a lot of customized solutions, which for some organizations is no good because every solution you sell can't be a custom solution. You have to have some consistency in what you sell. Otherwise, the cost of sales and the cost of support is just astronomical, number one. And number two, frankly, we all agree, right? We're crazy busy people. So we don't have time to tell somebody all about our business. They've got to come to the party already prepared to know about our business. And so now we've moved into an era where we're talking about value selling, and it's value to the customer. It's not value. It's not how cool our thing is. And what value selling says is that we need to teach our customers things about their business that they don't fully understand. We need to be able to articulate the value that they're going to get in the language of their business, what value they're going to get from doing business with us. And typically that's going to fall in one of three areas. It's going to either be a reduction in cost, it's going to be an increase in revenue, or it's going to be a mitigation of risk. Some people put a fourth in there, which is productivity, but I would argue that productivity either impacts the bottom line in terms of cost reduction, or productivity impacts the top line in terms of getting more sales. So that's kind of where we are today. It's a different focus, but it's forcing us to say we've got to know something about our customer. We have to do our research. We've got to come to our customer with some ideas. We have to know about their business, about their industry, and about the challenges that they're facing. No longer can we say, what keeps you up at night? We have to come in and say, this is what should be keeping you up at night. So let's talk a little bit about how you go about doing this value selling thing. Well, it turns out if you can capture 7 different attributes about your customers, your current customers, and then build a profile, and then use that as a benchmark for future customers, that you can really zero in on this zebra concept and really understand who your ideal customer is at a very granular level with, as they say, a great deal of specificity. And then you can focus your attention on them. And remember, what did we say happens when people focus in on their zebras? What do they get? Bigger, faster, and more sales. So that's what we're about. That's the goal. Bigger, faster, and more sales. So we don't have time today to go through all 7 of these, so we're going to hit on what I would like to call the big 3, but I want to put some context around the bigger, faster, more. So bigger sales, we know from almost 20 years of doing this that people who focus in on their ideal customer, focus in on their zebra, they see their sale size increase anywhere from 13 to 45%. Who in here wouldn't like to see your average sale go up 45%? I would. We also see that the sales cycle will go down. Write this down. 21 to 150% reduction in the sales cycle. Again, takes you 2 months. Now you're down under a month. That's a pretty good deal. And the other thing we see is this huge change in your win rate. And we've seen people have a win rate increase of almost 1,000%, which is crazy. But even if your win rate goes up 102%, which is the low end of what we've seen, that's still pretty good. Remember, 85% of the deals in your pipeline are never going to close. That means you're only closing 15%. If you can double that, go to 30%, what does that mean for your business? What if you can go to 50%? What if you can go to 60%? And as a matter of fact, people, organizations, and people who can clearly identify and with laser focus target their ideal customer, they will see up to a 90% close rate for those people that are truly their zebra. They're not going to get everybody. We're not claiming you're going to get everybody, but if you can get them to the point where you know that this is your zebra across those 7 different attributes, you're going to close 90% of them. The other thing you're going to get, and this is soft, but it's very important, is your customer, if you're selling to your zebra and you know it and they know that they're a perfect fit for you, they're going to get better service from you. They're going to have a better experience because you're not trying to force a sale. How many of us have decided to go after a sale that we know wasn't a good fit? Raise your hand. Okay, if you don't raise your hand, you're not telling the truth. We've all done it, right? So we've all gone after either we thought we could convert them to be an ideal customer, or we thought we could deal with their idiosyncrasies or their craziness, or we needed some money. We said, look, I'm just going to suck it up and deal with this person because I need the money. I need the revenue. And it always ends up costing us more because they don't get the best we have to offer, and they know it and we know it. So the soft value of focusing in on your zebra is you're going to be delivering your best service, your best ability, and that's going to serve you well not only for that customer, but the referrals that they're going to make for you down the road. So let's talk about the big 3. And in my estimation, the big 3 in terms of identifying your zebra, again, we don't have enough time to talk about all 7, is understanding what's the profile of the organization at an organizational level. We're going to talk some about the decision maker, and we're going to talk some about value. So on your handout, you have all 7 of the different attributes, and you have bolded the 3 that we're going to talk about. So when you think about the organization, what you do is you go and you say, okay, who are some of my best customers? And you're going to be able to go through in your mind or with your team, if you have a team, you can identify who those best customers are. And then what you want to do is you want to say, okay, what do they look like? How big are they? Do I typically deal with companies of under 50 people, under 1,000 people, only 2 to 3? What's the number? What's their business philosophy? So, for example, are they, how do they behave as a business? Are they very acquisitive? Or are they, they're just going to grow organically? They're not going to go out and they're not going to acquire other customers. Do they change their business a lot? The status quo or transformation? Are they transformative in their business? Are they always looking to change the way they do business, to reinvent themselves? Or are they very comfortable just doing what they're doing and they just want to do it a little bit more efficiently? Now, none of these traits are bad or good. They just are. So, for example, if you sell a sophisticated, high-end technology solution and you find out that you're talking to somebody who has pretty much of a status quo philosophy around their business, probably not going to be a good fit. And the sooner you can find that out through questioning and research and things like that, the better you're going to be able to say, you know what, I need to move on. Somebody else can service this customer, but they're not a fit for me. The same if you deal with companies. What's their perspective when they approach things? Do they look at things system-wide or departmentally? Then things like their market position, their industry, his location. But anyway, if you're a single solopreneur, this is a challenging exercise because you're going to have to find somebody to bounce this off of, because your tendency is going to be to kind of come up with a very large and broad base of ideal customers, and most of us, our ideal customer base is not that broad. If you're in a company or you have a small company, you need to get a cross section of people together. You look at your recent wins and your recent losses, and you figure out what are the commonalities on both sides of the loss and win, and then you can understand not only what are some characteristics that enable this to be a zebra, and then what are some characteristics that say, man, this is an anti-zebra. If I run into this, we never win. It's not a good fit for us. We need to move on. Make sense? Any questions? Okay. Next, we all talk about finding the decision maker. The challenge is that the decision maker for every deal that we do is different, especially if we're dealing with a company that has of any certain size. You could have 3 different opportunities going on at a particular company. They might have 3 different decision makers and they all operate totally differently. So you have to understand that. And I will tell you that as soon as you add more than one person to the equation, you see a huge drop in the chances that you're going to get a sale if you can't get both parties on board. If you're just dealing one-to-one with somebody and you get to the point where you're having a substantive conversation, the data suggests 81% of the time you're going to make the sale. But the minute you add a second person, that drops below 60%. That could be a spouse, it could be a partner. And you have to understand, when I win or when we win, what are the titles that we talk to? What are the roles that the decision maker plays? Are they a risk taker? And are they willing to delegate? Let me tell you a quick story. A client of mine in Minneapolis went through this exercise. What they found out was that when they talked to a client, regardless of the title of the person that was in the role that best fit them, if the person that they talked to, who was the decision maker for that particular opportunity, if they were a risk taker and they were willing to delegate, these guys won almost every time. But if they were not a risk taker and they were not willing to delegate, they never won. So they have to figure out, what questions do we need to ask to figure out if a new prospect, the person who's in the decision-making role, is a risk taker and is willing to delegate. You have to sit down as a team, or if you're an individual, you got to really do some soul searching and say, what are the kinds of questions I can ask? What's going to help me understand this? Because you probably can't ask them, hey, are you a risk taker? probably not going to help you. So this all goes into how do they think? How do they think about their role? Do they think strategically or do they think tactically? Again, neither one is bad. It just depends on what your solution is and what the profile of the people that you do business with looks like. And then you want to make sure you're matching that. If you only are successful talking to strategic thinkers because of the product or service that you have, and you find you're talking to somebody who's very operationally focused, you're talking to the wrong person. You've got to either if that's the way the person is and they are in fact the decision maker, then you're probably not going to be successful. Or they may not be the decision maker and you're just talking to the wrong person. You have to figure out, how do I get to the right person in the organization? Then you have to look at, excuse me, when you did have success, what was your access? Were you able to share your ideas with the decision maker? Or did you always have to work through a proxy? This is going to be more telling on the deals we thought we had won and lost side. And then, the question, that access, how did that translate into the outcome of the opportunity? In other words, if you didn't have access to the decision maker, but you were still able to make the sales, then why was that? What was that? Well, maybe it was because you always found a good, someone who was a good coach or mobilizer, whatever the term is, advocate, that was able to embrace your ideas and take them forward. So I'm going to pause here and say, how much of this is just, you're like, Dave, I know this stuff. You don't have to tell me this anymore. I know this. Or how much of this is new? Okay. Again, we're talking about changing the way we approach our customers, because we can't just talk about our stuff. The customer is the hero now. It's not our solution. That's not the hero. And last, and for most of the people I talk to, this is the most difficult. Well, first of all, let's talk about power. There's a term out there that says what we really want to deal with is power. And power is someone who can purchase even without a budget. So think about it. If you really want something, and I know Susan talked about this in her presentation, Sandra, I'm sorry. If you really want something and you can see the value that it's going to bring to your organization, you're going to figure out a way to find the money. If you're a business leader and it's not in the budget and you are presented with a compelling reason why this is a spectacular investment, you're going to figure out how to get the money. Same thing on the other side of the equation. If you're selling to someone and you can articulate the value that they're going to get from doing business with you, which is number 3 in the big 3, they're going to find the money. So let's talk a little bit about that. So value. So, do you know why your customers do business with you? I will tell you, it is not because you are a nice person. It is not because you dress well. It is not because you show up for meetings on time. It is not because you answer the phone on the first ring. It is because they get some value from doing business with you. They either reduce their costs, they increase their revenue, or they mitigate risk. If you are a nice person, if you answer the phone, all of those things, if you dress well, all of those things are helpful. They might be tiebreakers in a case where everything else is identical. But I don't know about you, but I've done business with people who make me crazy. But every time I do business with them, I get fantastic value. So I put up with the fact that they make me crazy because they deliver such significant value. That's a hard thing for a lot of people to swallow. People are like, no, it's all about my relationship. And I would argue that it's about your relationship from a business perspective. And the value of the relationship has a large degree to do with how valuable they perceive what they get from you in terms of a product or a service is. Stacy, wonderful lady, makes me laugh. We had a great time when I did my headshot. However, if The value I got from her was zero. Nobody looked at, I had no uptick in the number of likes I had on LinkedIn, all that other stuff. Even though we had a great time, we might go out for a beer, but I'm going to find someone else to do my headshot because I'm looking for value. Yeah, it's really neat that we had fun together and the time we spent together was really fun. That's great. And we had fun, at writing the book together, but that's not why we do business together. We do business together because she delivers value in a way, and I'm the one who decides what the measurement of that value is as the customer. She doesn't get to decide that. You don't get to decide what the value is that you deliver. Your customer decides that. So the question is, do you know why your customers do business with you? Have you asked them in very specific business terms? Can they tell you? Can they tell you that the value delivered concrete? You increase their sales by 15% over a 2-month period. Or after they started working with you, they reduced cost by 33% in this particular area in only 90 days. The language of business is money, and that's how customers perceive value. They will justify certain productivity gains with value, but basically it's going to be about money. So, do your customers expect a specific return on their investment? If they invest their money, if you're a money manager and they invest their money with you, do they expect a certain, return? If you're a real estate agent and they list their house with you, they do so with the expectation that you're going to sell their house at the price that you guys have agreed is a fair market value. They really don't care how many open houses you have. They really don't care how many offers you tell them you're going to get for them. What they care about is the result. Did you sell the house, and did you sell it in the time frame, and was the house sold in the time frame that was mapped to their expectations? What sort of proof do they look for when you're talking to a future customer? And you're going to figure this out by saying, what are your best customers? What's the kind of proof that they want? Do they want hard, fast statistical information, or are they comfortable with stories? And what do those figures tend to look like? I mean, I showed you my figures. 13 to 45% bigger sales, 150% shorter, 21 to 150% reduction in sales cycle, and a 102 to 984% increase in the number of sales that you're going to make. What do your customers ask for? And how long are they willing to wait before? So these are all things. And how do you find this out? You ask them. Now, sometimes you can't ask them because they won't tell you. They will tell a third party, but they won't tell you because they think if they tell you, if you sell a $5,000 solution and you find out that after 90 days they got a $50,000 to $100,000 return based on your $5,000 solution, you might say, whoa, my $5,000 solution is not going to be $25,000 because I deliver so much value. No, they won't tell you. They will tell a third party this, but they're not going to tell you. And even if they tell a third party, it's only going to be with the promise that they are price protected, so their price doesn't go up. But you might start having different prices for future customers because you realize that you're delivering some significant value. So those are the big three. What's the organizational profile? What's the profile of the decision maker, or what we call power? And how do your customers define value? So, the Olympics, tennis, and bike racing. What do these have in common other than they are sporting events? Every one of them recognizes second place. In the Olympics, you get a silver medal. In tennis, you get a check and you get a plaque. Wimbledon runner-up gets a nice thingy, not as cool as the winner, but they get this nice plaque that says they ran runner-up. Bike racing, you get money and you get to stand on the podium with a little number 2 below you, kind of like the Olympics. What about sales? There is no money for second place in sales. Sales is binary. One person wins and everybody else loses. So, if you want to win, it's about changing the way you think about sales so that you can help your customers change the way that they think about their business. Questions?